Hi everyone, I know I'm the last thing between you and a cheeky time at the pub, so I will try and keep this as animated as possible. So for the next 35 minutes, I'm going to go through 5 of the key principles that I find to be the most valuable when we're talking about creating a deeper, longer-lasting possibility around customer engagement. It's quite a content-rich deck. You will get the PDF afterwards, otherwise, if you're a bit nerdy like me, you'll be scrabbling to keep all the references, which you might not be able to see because they're tiny and at the footer, but you will get the full deck afterwards if you want to dive into the research. So as we heard from Andy this morning, all sorts of things are changing very rapidly, and customers are expecting more from the brands that they interact with. The problem is that the consumer landscape is changing so quickly that it can be really hard from a psych and trends perspective to keep up. And so what we need to do is figure out what are these deeper needs, the motivations, the drivers behind changing consumer trends and behaviors so that we can figure out where people are going next and stay ahead of those curves in a meaningful way. And you might well have heard about all the sort of generational differences here around sustainability, environmental credentials, but I want to give you some hard numbers. So younger folks, Gen Z, as well as slightly older millennial cohorts, I'm one of them, prefer to buy from sustainable brands. 40% of millennials will accept a job offer from a company, even if it means getting a pay cut, if that company's environmental credentials are aligned with their own personal values. And about half of people now, millennials and Gen Z alike, will go out and speak publicly in support or criticism of their employers on specific societal issues. This is well and good, but what's particularly interesting is that within 6 short years, by 2029, consumers born between 1981 and 2012 will make up a whopping 72% of the workforce. So they're going to put their money where their mouth is. So if we know this, and we know where the trends are coming, we need to be able to figure out how to respond in a meaningful way and cut through the noise. So I know we've mentioned me, it's all about relationships, it's all about referrals. You have to identify who your target audience is, and once you've identified them, figure out ways in which to attract and hold their attention. You then need to be able to build relationships that delight and that offer a longer sense of value, deliver experiences over time, great content, meaningful moments, and then finally inspire these customers to not only feel good about relating to you themselves, but obviously go and tell all their mates. So from a psychological perspective, how do we begin to do this? Well, first of all, we have to look at how and why we make decisions. Now, I want you to raise your hand if you would like to think that you are someone who makes decisions in a rational way. You think about the pros, the cons, you weigh them up, you're like, yeah, I'm going to make this decision. In general, raise your hand if you like to think. Okay, so we tend, at least in Western cultures, and certainly in the UK and in the US, and it does vary depending on where you're located, we tend to like to think that we're very rational. 40-plus years of behavioral science research have found that when it comes to decision-making, actually, where thought conflicts with emotion, it's the latter, the emotional impulse, that is designed by the neural circuitry in our brains to win. This is how we have evolved. And one of the reasons for this is that because the way that we are moved is by our relationships, and people usually appeal to us on all sorts of somatic and emotional levels that are transmitted much faster and much more deeply than any verbal cues they will offer. We're going to come back to that in a sec. When we're thinking about referrals and friends, when someone refers a brand to me, I was referred Charlotte Tilbury the other day. I tried the makeup, it's really good. It was over a cup of tea in my local cafe. I live in Barcelona, and we were having a great conversation. I was in a positive emotional state, underneath the trees, full sun, happy days, and she said, you've got to try this brand. And I did, without hesitation, I went. I didn't read any reviews. I was like, if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for me. Why does this matter? Because you know that when you're in a positive emotional state or a longer-term mood, as a customer, when it comes to decision-making, whoever that person is recommending to you, you'll experience them with lower risk. You'll be like, oh yeah, I'm sure it's fine. I'm not even going to worry about if there's any risk to me. And it's going to yank up your purchase intention immediately. So if we want to create a positive emotional state, it's not enough just to kind of give someone a nice tip over coffee or a cheeky drink. You also have to think about trust. And this is the first of the 5 pillars that I want to land with you today. So thinking about trust, in any kind of configuration of relationship, whether between parents and their children, between your friends, within a culture and an organization, or within the relationship that sits between a brand and its customers, time and again, trust is the single most important ingredient for the development, maintenance, and flourishing of healthy, happy, well-functioning relationships. And this was really brought home in a now classical study that was done by Nielsen in 2012, when they found that up to 92% of people trust recommendations from those closest to them. And this holds still true today. So how do we build these forms of trust? Well, I'd like you to think for a moment of someone that you know, that you care about, maybe a favorite friend or a loved one, maybe your partner. And I want you to think about how you feel when you're with that person. So what's it like to be in their company? Do your shoulders come down? Does your sense of self expand a little to include them? And whenever I do this exercise, the feelings that come up for me, not in any particular order, is a sense of safety. I feel safe with that person. I feel understood. They know who I am. They make the space and time to really get to know me. I feel that they have my best intentions at heart. So I feel enabled and supported. They want to help me achieve the goals that I care about. And most importantly, we don't talk about this very much, the fact that you know what you're getting with that person. We are all messy. We make mistakes. I've got quite salty language that I keep in check with these sorts of things. My mates know what they're getting when they come to see me. And the same thing the other way around. And this is the last piece that often brands miss an opportunity on. Because online, the sense of knowing what you get and then building the sense of feeling understood and supported and safe comes down to transparency. This is a good proxy for trust online. A great example of a brand that does this well, especially when it comes to negative information, which is where you build that sense of agency in the clients, and we'll come back to that, is Netflix. This is such a good example of specific things done well in concert to create greater agency for the client. So I was ready to watch last year Sex Education. It was the grand season finale. I had my cheeky wine, my pizza, my partner. I was like, yes, this is going to be great. And I think the new season's coming out in September. Anyway, so I'm all geared up in this heightened state of excitement, and I get this. Oh, man, I didn't want to have that nuke my kind of excitement and my drive. But they tell you exactly what the fee is going to be. This has since gone up. They tell you when. They give you a rationale. We're adding more great entertainment, so there's more to enjoy. They don't expect you to be happy about it, so the call to action is a simple okay. And then finally, probably for legal reasons, in teeny tiny writing, you may always cancel your membership by going to your account, and it provides a direct link. Now, obviously, as someone who comments on UX, that needs to be bigger. You don't want to drive the behavior, but you don't want to make it hard. But what's interesting about this is that it gives you all of the information you need for you to be in the driving seat. And that's a really key point about respecting the customer. They also do this with subscriptions. They will email you 3 days before you get billed to make sure that you're still in it. In an age of consent, this is a really interesting example of a brand leveraging that to build consumer trust. Another example, are any of you familiar with Wise, TransferWise? Yeah, so it's a foreign exchange company that I use quite often. And what's interesting about them is that they have like a leaderboard to show how they compare to other banks. Now, I bank with Starling, and we're going to see from them in a sec, but I still use Wise. Why? Because I know that if they're giving me this information, chances are they're not hiding anything else that's unpleasant. So they might be, but I don't think further than that step. So the point is, if you can give your customers the information they need to make their decision, even if it sometimes reflects badly on you, it's going to make a positive, lasting impact, typically. Now, you also have to be able to represent your content and story and values with authenticity, and this is a big one. And we know when we look at studies done around authenticity, it's not just something fluffy. It does have significant physical, tangible impacts. If you are perceived by your customers as authentic, they will receive your message better. They'll be more open to hearing what you have to say. The quality of that message will be seen as better. They'll be like, I can trust this person, the information they're giving me is accurate. And finally, it also drives purchase intention. So if someone thinks that you're real, they'll be much more likely to want to stick around. So how can we build this sense of authenticity? This is where integrity and the 4 Cs framework comes in. So integrity is quite tricky to talk about as an idea. It's hard to measure. And so in my book, Business Unusual, there was kind of a framework that you can use, and take a company like Patagonia, whatever one you want to look at, to figure out what are they doing to actually communicate certain values and live by them so that people can actually assess how they're functioning. So the first C of integrity is about making a positive, explicit, public commitment to certain values. And Patagonia is an obvious one to choose. They've had core values from the very start. It's not just about profit, it's also about people, planet, and purpose. Recently, in the 50 years kind of reboot, they re-outlined the values that they are most attuned to or aligned with. So that's the first one, is commitment. The second C of building and communicating integrity is that of congruence between action and words. So are you walking the talk? And on this one, typically, the people who are walking the talk are the ones that take a risk to their bottom line, at least initially. And this will come back with the final C as well. And you can see that it's not just about, yes, we care about the planet. It's like, no, we will pay you to give us your used gear, recycle it or refurbish it, or give you credits to be able to get gear again. So it's this kind of cyclical system. And it's really clear that this is working. People have huge love and advocacy around this brand because they walk the talk. The third C about integrity is building a track record. It's about consistency. Could you have a third party look at your behavior as a company and say, yes, this company is kind of proving that they're committed to these principles over time? And they actually have, very handily, from my example here today with you, a history of all of their social responsibility actions. And they're not without issues. And they have been kind of the kind of company that learns from their mistakes. But what's really interesting is if you look at their ads through time, the consistency is there. They've always been a brand that talks about the issues, the crises, the problems around resource extraction, and they've tried to find ways to funnel their effort, energy, attention, and money into projects that will help with their bottom line around the values. The fourth C, which is a bit odd, is about coherence, and this is doing the right thing for the right reason. And again, this ties back into that sense of risk. If you stand up for something before it's socially accepted, before the bandwagons come along and go, oh yes, let's all do this now. If you're the first mover, it may cost you a lot, but in the long run, people will see that you had the guts to make that statement from the outset, and that means that you probably had your heart in the right place. Good examples here with fair trade. They learn from their mistakes. People trust them. It's all about the values. And I don't know if you saw this about making Earth their one and only shareholder. This was huge. Okay. So why does any of this matter? It's a nice story, and you're sitting here nodding, and we all like to think that we want to live according to our values, and we do. But one of the things that matters here is that they are trying to attract people who share their values with them. It's about social identity to an extent. And the reason that this matters is because when we're looking to brands, and we're all customers here, that we want to give our money, our time, and attention to, we tend to be attracted to the ones that we perceive as similar to ourselves. And this is where the principle of homophily comes in. If a friend who is similar in values to you, who likes the same things that you like, who watches the same shows that you like, says to you, there is a brand that I absolutely adore and you're going to love it, based on that building block of homophily, of that love of the same, we are much more likely to just go straight in, and that kind of social risk is cleared, and then you buy. And this is true whatever the relationship might be, so whether it's a friend or an influencer that we perceive as someone similar. And that's because that which is similar, generally, we perceive as more credible, we perceive them as more trustworthy and reliable, and so the persuasiveness, the effectiveness of their communication will be much higher. Clearly, it doesn't take a great leap to see how this is absolutely central to advocacy, and this is also why referrals from friends and loved ones are quite so persuasive and powerful. This is the psychology behind why what you do at Mention Me works. Now, what's interesting is that even though we live in a TikTok, Rumble, Instagram age where there's loads of filters, the messages that we respond to the most are still the ones that are unfiltered, that are authentic, and that reflect our real lived experience. So I'd like you to have a think about how the following content achieves this less filtered, real kind of look. One of my favorite people to follow, Louise Boyce, she's a model. And on her Instagram, she often has this sort of split-screen example of, you know, the pre-red carpet, pre-photo shoot, pre-makeup version, and then the fabulous, you know, kind of made-up doll look. She also does a lot of stuff around the content of what it is to have a kid or family life that is completely hidden from public view, and how these things rub up against each other. The reason this works is that we like that aspirational element, but we also don't want to feel like we're alone in our daily struggles, right? So she leverages this principle of homophily, our love of the same, by understanding the people that she's relating to, mostly mums, similar age, and then mirroring back the shared experience that they have together. And there's a very quick way to do this, to get a litmus test on how well your marketing material is doing with this. The first question to ask is, who are the people you're trying to reach? What's their identity, their age, psychographics, demographics? Why do they need you? What's their story? Do they need to have a sense of a pick-me-up? Do they need to feel like they're not alone? How are they feeling? What's their emotional state? Are they feeling excitement or anxiety? Are they bored? Do they need someone to come in and give them a bit of a lift? And finally, what do they need from you? What emotional or practical support can you offer? If it's bloom and wild, which we'll see later, maybe it's a question of brightening someone's day because they're having a hard time. One example that I really love when it comes to mirroring the needs of your audience is Huel. And this is one of my favorite ones because it's quite odd, and I quite like the weird ones. So obviously you've got kind of their product, but what's really curious is how people get really into the brand, and it's like hardcore fans. So obviously you've got the kind of the hooligan branding. What you might not know is that people actually get tattooed. I mean, I don't know if you've got any PUMA examples of, well, actually you probably do. But can you imagine all the conversations down the pub that would have ensued when this guy gets his shorts off and he's like, oh yeah, have a look guys, Huel. They're like, what have you done? It's like, yeah, but this brand is amazing. I'm gonna have them on my body till I die. Like, that's quite an endorsement. And you can see that they then champion the people who go that extra mile on their social feeds, so there's that kind of like halo effect. And what they're doing clearly work. We know from the stats from Mention Me that 60% of the referrals convert. That's a huge rate. The year-on-year growth is massive, and referred customers then go on and pass kind of like paying it forward in a way with referrals, because they've been so ignited to get through the door and then been met with an experience that's so delightful they can't resist referring on. Now, there's also something that sets persuasive brands apart from the rest. And when it comes to your identity and the stories that you tell about who you are, it's not enough to win trust and to have similar shared homophilic values. You also have to offer a certain level of uniqueness. And this is where things can get a bit tricky, because we have competing needs. On the one hand, in our personal lives and beyond, we want to feel like we are safe, it's familiar, it's comforting. At the same time, we want to explore in the world. There's a sense of curiosity, adventurousness. We want to try what's new. And so you end up with these two pathways to engaging people with your content: the familiar, homogeneous side versus the heterogeneous, novel side. Now, homogeneity, I'm going to sort of break this down. It's the kind of content where you see an advert, you kind of know what you're going to get. It's the insurance advert that says, here, get 20% off if you buy this, and it's the best rate of insurance this year, versus the insurance company that uses, Geico's Gecko or the Mayhem from Allstate. So a homogeneous, familiar piece of content will basically confirm what we already feel about the world. It's comforting because it's familiar. It reinforces the perspectives and views that we already hold, and it encourages stasis. It doesn't cause us to grow or to challenge our beliefs or to reassess that brand. The curious thing is that brands that go an alternative route, that take risks, can also gain bigger, better rewards. And so here's a heterogeneous approach. And this is essentially brands that will take the risk to challenge our views and to get blowback, like Nike did with Colin Kaepernick. They'll make us uncomfortable, and sometimes people will split off and turn away. They'll offer an alternative perspective that might rub up against the assumptions we've made about the world, and they also encourage growth if we are willing to take a step out of our comfort zone. So there's a video I want to show you. It's 3 minutes. We might not see all of it, but I think we have the time. So see what you make of this.
Make yourself comfortable. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, how do I want to sit? This.
Water there. You need a drink.
I don't want to ruin the lipstick.
Oh, yeah.
Social media can be good, but it can be bad as well.
In terms of her building her confidence, it can build her confidence.
Margie is just trying to find herself now, you know. She's not influenced by social media yet.
Most of the influencers that I've seen have definitely had a positive impact on me.
Hey guys, here's a beauty hack I'm obsessed with.
I am so happy. Look at how cinched my waist is. Look at how flat my stomach is.
It's the shortcut to flawless skin.
You know that Botox doesn't just reduce wrinkles, right? Baby Botox is amazing. You're never too young to start.
That is not me.
There are these great powders. They stop you feeling hungry so you can always skip breakfast and lunch.
And you have to treat yourself to a chemical peel. They're a total glow up. They burn away the top layers of your skin and let new skin grow through.
Hey, Mojo. If your teeth are uneven, you can always file them down with a nail file. It's literally so simple.
File your teeth.
Don't put up with your thin lips, sweetie. Lip filler kits let you inject yourself at home. They're my total go-to.
Fake eyelashes are so easy to glue on if you cut your eyelashes off.
There's some really great pills you can use.
Keep telling yourself you're not hungry, you're just thirsty.
Never look bloated again.
Poke it into your skin.
Sexiest lashes, Botox.
Remember, skinny is never finished.
Oh.
It's
Have you actually seen stuff like that?
yeah, a lot. This stuff is on every girl's feed. They're watching, right? I mean, at night when I can't see them.
It's scary to me that my kids are watching this and they think that's how they have to look.
I saw one of the teeth filing videos. I remember that one. I remember seeing that all over. I know this stuff.
I can't prevent them from seeing these, but I can talk to them about it.
100% always be talking. And have Peyton know that she can always ask me anything.
My mom has taught me not to listen to people like that and to be proud of who I am.
Teary when I watched that, and I've watched it a lot of times, and I've given sort of this as an example on a few occasions. And I think the reason it hits home, and I see some of you like this, and some of us like this, and obviously it's not just girls, it's boys, it's everyone. But the reason I think it's so powerful is it goes to this deeper sense of wanting to protect those that we love, wanting to talk about the shadow sides of a lot of the technology that we use every single day. And if you are in a position in your brand where you can have these kinds of conversations, if it makes sense to, obviously not every brand is going to have a relationship to these topics, then why not? Because brands can also be a huge power for good. So it's also a way to capture attention meaningfully and empower customers at a deeper level. And so if you want to drive advocacy, you can take a more integrated approach, one that does dig deeper. And this is about going beyond the simple pleasure principle, the quick hits of maybe slightly more glowing skin this week, or a cheeky beer down the pub with your friends that tastes good, but it's not from a carbon neutral brand, whatever it is. Moving beyond just the happiness hedonistic principle, which is about pleasure attainment and pain avoidance, we can go deeper and move towards a place of purpose, of eudaimonic drive, the sense of integrity, of fulfillment, where you're encouraging people to understand how to fully individuate into their lives. And I think, why not? I mean, businesses have such a huge potential here to help others. And so I'd like to ask how this is kind of happening and playing out with brands today. There are brands that are making a big impact. And we're seeing that as younger consumers start to grapple with bigger and deeper issues, like we just saw, this move towards eudaimonic consumerism is becoming more prevalent among younger folk who are dealing with challenges that we didn't necessarily have to. And we're seeing this in all sorts of ways. But when we're thinking about what does this brand represent, what's their identity, what's at the core of who they are in the world, what's their DNA, not just ESG, that's where we need to be focusing. So instead of something like this, and I've been banking with Barclays for a long time, but they are sort of shrouded in all sorts of fiascos and scandals, just a selection of headlines from the last year, people want something like this. We all have to use money. Why not use a bank that is going to be a bit more responsible, that's going to help the world, that's going to be aligned with your values to affecting change in the way that you would like that change to express itself? And these are just some of the partnerships that they have. And so it's not just about that short-term goal, it's about giving people that short-term goal, meeting it, and providing something more if and when you can. So brand success, I hope I've landed this now, is more about deepening the sense of what you can offer people. It's about those deeper needs being met. And so I want to finish on this principle around self-determination. And this is huge. And this is something which I think about a lot in my own personal life as well. Now, as a principle and a framework, self-determination was proposed by two psychologists a while back, and they discovered through their research that throughout the world, there are these three fundamental psychological needs that are innate, they are universal, and they are essential to our flourishing and our well-being. And if we can meet these needs over the course of our lifetime, we tend to get a greater sense of internal integrity, inner coherence, and flourishing, that eudaimonic drive, that good life. We feel good about how and who we are in the world. So what are these three needs, and how can we fulfill them? Well, the first one is about autonomy. It's about agency. We talked about Netflix earlier and TransferWise not hiding information that people might find unpalatable. It's respecting your customer enough, because we all want to live in a way that feels uncoerced and that feels authentic to who we are, in alignment with our values. We want to feel like we're in the driving seat, where we have greater volition over our own behaviors, our own environment, and that agency of, I can choose for myself, thank you very much. So rather than going into UX journeys, which happens all the time, where brands strip this away, there is, in fact, another way. There are examples of companies all around the world that are giving customers their agency back and reaping the rewards as a result. Earlier in Andy's talk, we heard about Bloom & Wild. I love Bloom & Wild. I refer friends to them all the time. Should be a metric for that. And one of the things that I really loved about them, thinking again about the 4 C's and taking a risk early on in order to give that sense of where their values are, they showed this spectacularly back in 2019 when they received a series of emails from customers wanting to opt out of Mother's Day marketing messages. For various reasons. Maybe they didn't have a good relationship with their mother, maybe they were adopted, maybe they'd lost their mother, for whatever reason. And rather than just opt out those few people that wrote in, they sent out a simple text email to their entire database to say, we want to get in touch, Mother's Day can be sensitive for some of us, if you don't want us to send you Mother's Day material, just let us know, opt out here, we'll do the rest, you'll still get everything else. That single text-based email, how much is that going to cost, really? It's someone being thoughtful, sending it out, and they stood to risk a lot of people going, oh, great, I'm just going to opt out and see you later. What actually happened was that the response from social channels was so positive and so large, they got free press coverage throughout all of the national papers, and because it was so successful, they went on to create the thoughtful marketing movement. They were the instigators. They took the risk. They made a public declaration around what they cared about, the customer, and other people then fell in line, joined the bandwagon, and hurrah for them. So actions around this. We have to design experiences, whether it's marketing interactions or like on the Starling app, if you check it out, that give people back their agency. Offer people alternatives that align with their values. When we're given the choice, we will always do that which feels more coherent with our internal sense of principle. You can invite people to participate with you. Don't make them take a journey they don't want to take. So that's the first one around autonomy, agency. The second principle that is unique, well, that is innate and universal and unique, we think, to humans, is that of competence, being able to be effective and capable, having the skills to achieve the goals that are most meaningful to us in our lives. And what's interesting about this is it's just giving people the right tools to be able to take useful actions to get them to the outcome that they want. So it's about understanding, what does the client want? How can I help them get there? And if you do this well, and you deliver this as a brand, it massively impacts people's intrinsic motivation to work with you, to connect with you. It means they're more excited. This is a brand that helps me out. Of course I'm going to want to hear from them, open that email, respond, refer a friend. And so when you're looking at online examples, I'm going to give an e-commerce one here, instead of doing something like this, aggregating sites that give you all of the products you can possibly want, very utilitarian, you can try something else. Make it simple for people to reach their goals, meet them where they are. And you can be present on their platform of choice, make it easy across the gram or TikTok, whatever it is, and create, where possible, and if you have the budget, tech-enabled experiences that support them and delight them so they can get what they want on their platform of choice without having to do the extra work. So in the States, during the pandemic, there was one company that really stood out to me that did this really well, and it's Warby Parker. They are a company that does eyewear, and no one could leave their houses, depending on the state that you're in. And so they created an AR app where you could basically try on glasses at home and make choices that would lead to a sale because you could see what you'd look like. That really worked, and it really increased their sales at a time when other people were floundering. The third and final principle of self-determination is that of belonging, relating, feeling like we are connected to those that we care about, feeling accepted, understood by our peers and by the companies that we interact with. And finally, if you get this right, and this is where the advocacy and the love piece is so important because it's all about relationship, if you get this right, relatedness and a feeling of belonging in a community can be one of the strongest predictors of healthy relationships and well-being. And it means that if people get negative information about your company, if you mess up whatever over time, they'll be more resilient. They won't kind of write you off as quickly. And this is really important. So if a brand is referred to you by a friend, of course it's going to build on this sense of relatedness and belonging. And so instead of going for the usual suspects, instead of going for your customers and thinking, well, this has worked in the past, we've got a lineup of the usual people over here, let's just market to them, you can try and consciously reach out to people that you may not have considered. And this is really interesting, going back to the mention me approach. Don't just go for the person that spent a tiny amount. Look more deeply. What is it that they're doing that contributes to your company, to your business, to your bottom line? Go for those folks that might feel written off, that maybe don't spend as much, or maybe they don't fit the kind of persona that you'd set out in your segmentation. Create the opportunities to delight and reassure people, and make sure that at every touch point, you're eliciting positive, memorable brand association. So when they think of you, they have that positive emotional sense that comes with it. And this is where I always like this alternative to the all-boys club. So to end on a quick example here, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Lacoste, but they had an ad that came out, I think it was last year, where of all of the different biases that we have and that get mentioned and worked on, rightly so, in the social domain, one of the ones that doesn't get much airtime is ageism. We don't see that many old people being brought into marketing messages. And yet they had this amazing run where it was this campaign where lots of diversity was included, and it was really well received by people because people are people. We want to see ourselves up in the limelight, represented as part of a meaningful contribution to society. And they won a bunch of awards for it, and it was really welcomed by the wider marketing community and within business. I realize this is a lot of content for the end of the day. So to summarize, if you want to optimize your business, if you want to future-proof your business, you have to think about how to psychologically build in those dynamics and harness the ones that are going to help you to create those streams of referrals, that advocacy. And so the principles and biases that drive us, the motivations that shape how and why we choose, that's really important to understand well. And if you do this well, and with all the skills and tools available to you, you're actually going to be the people driving this change in the wider world. Because the standards of best practice that get established now come back either to benefit or to bite us in the end. And this is because you are both the architects and the users of our future web. And so I'd like to leave you with the question, What kind of world do you want to build? I'm going to give you the cheat sheet because we cover a lot of ground. Today, we talked about trust, transparency, and authenticity, integrity in the 4 C's framework, commitment to explicit values, congruence in word and deed, being consistent, track record over time, coherent, right thing for the right reason. Homophily, our love of the same, what sits underneath that sense of advocacy being so powerful, understanding people's needs, mirroring your audience. Being cautious but helpful if you're thinking about marketing, to use uniqueness to balance with familiarity where it's possible. And finally, self-determination, giving people the autonomy to make their own choices, the skills, the competence and ability to reach their meaningful goals, and that sense of relatedness and belonging. If you would like to learn more, you're welcome to check out these various books, the values map. I will be around for drinks as well, and I think we have a little time for Q&A, so don't be shy. I would love to hear your voices. Thank you very much.